Hi there, welcome to Dr. Tu Academy. This is Java tutorial for beginners, lesson number 11. The topic of this lesson is inheritance. There are four basic concepts regarding object-oriented programming. They are inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, and abstraction. So what is inheritance? In Java, we can define a child class to inherit from a parent class. The child class can inherit the property and the behavior of a parent class. The parent class is also called base class or superclass. So which members of parent class can be inherited by the child class or base class? The private members cannot be inherited by the child class. The public and the protected members can be inherited by the child class. The child class is also called derived class or subclass. The child class inherits members from parent. It can access protected or public members of the parent class. We will also learn how to use the keyword, super keyword. Now let's double-click eclipse.exe file. Click on Project Explorer. We've seen the projects for the last 10 lessons. Now let's create a new project for this lesson. File, New, Project. Select Java project. Click on Next. Project name, Lesson 11. Click on Next. Click on Finish. Module name, com.Dr. Tu Academy .java tutorial .lesson 11. Right-click on Lesson 11. Select New, Class, Package name, com.Dr. Tu Academy .java tutorial .lesson 11. Class name, code tester. Click on Finish. Now let's write down the main method. Public static void main string brackets args braces. Let's create another class, user. Right click on Lesson 11, New, click on Class, User, Click on Finish. Define member variables for user, private, stream, username, define constructors for user, public, user, set the username to empty stream. Let's define another constructor with the parameter username, public, user, stream, name, username is assigned with the parameter name. Let's define a method to set the username. Set the username, parameter, stream, name, username is assigned name. Another method to get the username, return username. Now we are going to define another class to inherit from the user class. Right click on Lesson 11, New Class. We call this new class Student. We want the class Student to be inherited from the class User. So we enter User here. Click on Finish. Now the class Student extends User class, so it inherits all the properties and the methods of the user class. But we can add new member variables to class Student. Private string student GPA. Let's define the constructor for student. Public student. It takes two parameters, string student name, string GPA, braces. Let's call it the constructor of superclass user first. Then we assign GPA to the member variable student GPA. Now let's define new methods to handle student GPA for the subclass student. Public void set student GPA string GPA student GPA is assigned GPA public stream get student GPA return student GPA. Now we have defined two methods to handle the student GPA. Now let's declare a student object first. Declare name and the GPA. My name, my GPA. Create a student object. Parameter Jeff GPA 4.0 my name student get username my GPA is student get GPA. As we can see, get username is defined in parent class user. Get student GPA is defined in subclass student. Now let's double click on line 8 to put a breakpoint here. Let's click on debug button. Let's step into the constructor of student. Let's step into the super constructor. You see, now we get into the constructor of user. Assign that name to username. Name is Jeff. Now username is Jeff. Now we assign the GPA 4.0 to student GPA. Next, step into get the username. As we can see, the get username method is the method of user class. It's the superclass parent class. Now we get my name is Jeff. even though we did not define the class getUsername in class student, since we define our class student as the child class of class user, it can inherit the method getUsername from the parent class user. And in our child class student, we define the getStudentGPA. Step into it. Now we are in the student class. Step over. Now we get the student GPA. My GPA is 4.0. As we can see, we define the member variable username in class user, also the method to get the username and set the username. And we define the member student GPA in the child class student. The student extends user class. It means it's the child class of user. So it inherits all the properties and the methods from user. So here we don't need to define the student name. We just inherit the username. Thus, notice we create a new student object by calling the constructor with two parameters. Can we call the constructor without the parameters? Let's find out. Let's declare a student object, student2, 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 assign new object. As you can see, we have the red line here. That means there is an error. If you put the mouse next to the red line, it will show you the error message. The constructor student without the parameter is undefined. So there are quick ways to fix it. We need to create a new constructor student, right? So let's go to student class, create a new constructor, public student, super, this one calls the constructor of its super class. Let's create another constructor. String name. Super name. Student GPA is 0. Put the student GPA here. Let's initialize the student GPA here. Empty string. Here we initialize student GPA to empty string. Here we initialize it to 0. Now the red line disappears. Name 2, GPA 2. Now let's assign name to student 2. Username Alex. Now let's set GPA for Alex. .0. Now let's get the name of student 2. Let's get the GPA of student 2. Let's double click line 15. Click on debug button. Step over. We can see my name and my GPA, Jeff, and 4.0. Now we are going to create a new student object for student 2, but the constructor does not take any parameters. Let's step into it. It's called a constructor of superclass. Now step into constructor of superclass. Initialize username to empty string. Initialize student GPA to empty string. So for student 2, it's student GPA and the username, they are all empty string. We can also expand here to see the student GPA and the username, they are all empty string. Now let's step into set the username. Sorry, I stepped over the set the username. Now let's step into the set student GPA. Assign GPA to student GPA. This is the method in student class. We can see the name 2 is Alex, GPA 2 is 4.0. As we can see, the student class is a subclass of user class. So the student class inherits all the properties and the methods from the user class, but the student class can add its own properties and the methods. This is what we call inheritance in Java programming. Let's summarize what we just learned about class inheritance. The inheritance is one of the 4 most important features in OO programming. A child object inherits property and behavior from its parent object. That is, the member variables and the methods. So which parent members can be inherited? It's protected and the public members can be inherited. For private members, it cannot be inherited. So in our child class, we can access the protected and the public members of its parent class, but it cannot access the private members of its parent class. In our next lesson, we are going to learn another important feature of Java's OO programming paradigm. It's called Java polymorphism. We will learn what is polymorphism and how to do method overloading and the method overriding. That's all for this lesson of class inheritance. I will see you in our next class, Java polymorphism.